Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We are firmly in an era of clickbait titles, and I don't want to do that to you guys. So when I originally started looking into this story, the title really grabbed me. I think we all, especially through fiction, kind of become enamored with the thought of disguises. I mean, if you're a fan of the Mission Impossible films, you know that that's always a very big component in them. These ultra realistic disguises that help people infiltrate or go somewhere where they're not really supposed to be. When we cross that with crime, it sure makes for a compelling pull. And that's what pulled me to today's story. Now, as I mentioned, I think that's clickbait. But as I looked into today's story, I think there's still an important story to be told there. There's still a search for justice. There's a family that's looking for answers. And there is someone that's on the run. So can we help with all that? Yes. But also, can I keep my promise to you about not doing things like we see happen in this story? Yes, I believe so, because there is another story that we're going to cover after we get through this initial one that is about what I believe is an amazing piece of costuming that allowed someone to get away with a crime to the point that they will likely never be charged for it. Actually, not likely, they won't be charged for it ever. So we'll get to that story as well. But let's go ahead and start with the story that kind of pulled me down this rabbit hole this week. And this story takes place in Jamesport. Jamesport is a village in Riverhead, Suffolk County, New York, on the north shore of Long Island. As of the 2020 census, its population was only 1,609 people. It consists of a downtown area and surrounding farms. And as a matter of fact, where this murder would take place looks like just a beautiful area. You can see there's clearly farmland all around this, and it's a home that is on a nursery. What happened there, let's get to the basics of this case. It would have occurred back in March of 2024, and that would have been Monday night, March 4th. According to Suffolk County Police, a 911 call came in at 11:43 p.m. from a residence on Herrick's Lane. Riverhead Town Police officers responded to the call and found Conrad Gowan, 36 years old, inside with a sharp force injury, police said. Gowan, who lived in the home, was transported by the Riverhead Volunteer Ambulance Corps to Peconic Bay Medical Center in Riverhead, where he was pronounced dead. And the original details, you can see there's not even a picture of the victim, and it was just very light coverage. We did get a little more detail. Home health care aide. He was working as a home health care aide, a live-in home health care aide. Conrad Gowan was a live-in home health care aide who came to the North Fork for the job, but previously lived elsewhere, according to a man who was at the Herrick's Lane home. Now, this man would withhold his identity, and maybe for good reason, because here we are almost a year and a half later, and we're talking about trying to find the suspect in this case still. But let's get to his quote. "This had nothing to do with Jamesport and nothing to do with the family," said the man, who did not give his name but indicated it was his elderly relative that Mr. Gowan had been caring for. He said that Mr. Gowan had contacts in New York City, including a girlfriend, but when pressed for more information, he told the Riverhead News Review, "I really can't say anything more." So it seemed like he was trying to be helpful in terms of the information that he could share about this. But what's interesting is he's basically calling out the person that would become known as a suspect right off the bat. And again, for this coverage, we're not seeing even a photo of the victim. Now, admittedly, Conrad does not have a big social media presence based on what I could find. I did find one picture of him, and that actually came from his obituary over at David Williams' funeral service. And there's even in this obituary, there's just not a ton of detail. He did come from Jamaica, so at some point he immigrated here to the U.S. His funeral was held in Jamaica, New York, and he was buried in Morganville, New Jersey. Not a whole lot of other information about him. And this is one of those cases where when you have, first of all, not even a picture of the victim that's in the paper, we have mention of a girlfriend, no information on her, no name, no photo, no anything. how is the public going to help law enforcement? Now, it seems like at this period in time, back in March of 2024, law enforcement wasn't really asking for help. That all changed this past week. And here is a post from Suffolk County Police Department that was posted on August 3rd, 2025. Wanted for Jamesport murder. Suffolk County Crime Stoppers and Suffolk County Homicide Squad detectives are seeking the public's help to locate the woman who murdered a man in Jamesport in 2024. Majorie Quarrie, aka Nicola Watson, stabbed Conrad Gowan in the neck. The phrasing on that is pretty strong and leads me to believe that there might have been a witness to it. It's interesting. In some of the news articles around this, they throw the word allegedly in there. And of course, I'm going to just say, we're talking about someone that is innocent until proven guilty. They've got to go through a judicial process. But here, SCPD seems to be calling out pretty strong that Majorie Quarrie stabbed Conrad Gowan in the neck. A warrant for murder second degree has been issued. Subject is known to frequently change her appearance, including utilizing wigs. And that sentence, I think, is where some of the newspapers, one in particular that a lot of the other newspapers kind of trickle off of, ran a little wild with that sentence, is my belief. Admittedly, taking a look at these photos, sure, it's a very different appearance. But honestly, two of these photos look the same to me. It looks like she's got her makeup and she's likely wearing a wig. And in the other one, her makeup's not on and her wig's not on. Is that what I would consider a master of disguise? Not necessarily. Is it abnormal for people that wear wigs to wear different styles of their wigs and then modify their makeup for those styles? Not at all. So that's where it kind of blows my mind that we get cops seek master of disguises on the lam as the title of an article. And this is a repost to AOL, but we can see the original is from the New York Post. And unfortunately, this is a trend that I've recognized with the New York Post. And it's a trend that honestly I'm conflicted about because of the way this was phrased. You've got all these other following publications, right, me included, that picked up on this story. It grabbed our attention. We went in to learn about it. And, we're trying to help police capture someone that murdered somebody. So I that's where I get conflicted about it. I wish we didn't have to do things like this with titles in this way to grab that attention, to get people to help in a case like this. I do believe personally that there's other mechanisms. If someone would have reached out, there was some family that's interviewed, but honestly, the information on the victim is just super, super limited. We don't have a profile of a real human being that's kind of out there to help motivate some people to feel like helping in this case. What we do have is just an assumption in a clickbait title that is pulling people to this case. But like I said, I'm split on it because I want people to help cases of these natures. Like anytime someone's murdered, I want that to be enough to interest other people. And for the general public, it just isn't always that way. Two mugshots that cops released show Quarrie appearing radically different, with long hair and makeup in one and close cropped hair and no makeup in another. The gruesome slaying of Gowan took place shortly before midnight on March 4th, 2024. And for some of you that might think, John, you're way overstating this, blah, blah, blah. There's a sentence I was going to include and then I took it out. She's the Long Island chameleon. I mean, that it's just, at some point, it starts transcending sharing facts and almost becomes a version of fictionalized storytelling. And quite honestly, there's a lot of that happening in true crime right now. And I do find it bothersome. But we need to focus on the case. We need to focus on helping. The gruesome slaying of Gowan took place shortly before midnight on March 4th, 2024. Quarrie was later identified as a suspect, but it remains unclear what sparked the attack. News of the murder continues to rattle the quiet neighborhood. Meanwhile, others in the community remain intrigued by the accused killer's knack for using disguises to dodge the police. It seems sort of strange, another neighbor told the outlet. I want to dive into it a little bit more. I've found no instances that mention any actual thing where she's using disguises to dodge the police. We don't know if that's true or not. Maybe she is. I don't know for a fact, but we also don't have her captured. So how would we know that? Or if they were hearing that, apparently she does have some family that lives in the area. If one of the family members came forward and was like, "Oh yeah, no, she's hiding out. I don't know where she is, but the last time I saw her, she looked completely different." Like there was some supporting information for this. They should be including that here. They obviously aren't, and based on what I'm seeing, it's because it doesn't exist. What does exist are the facts, and let's try to stick to those. "There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my nephew and cry about my nephew," said the victim's aunt, Debbie Thompson. A Crime Stoppers alert was put out for the 53-year-old Quarrie. Suffolk police say she entered Gowan's ground floor apartment before stabbing him in the neck in a violent rage of passion. "We believe that Quarrie learned that day that she was not Gowan's only girlfriend. She had driven out to Queens that day to see him, driven from Queens to Jamesport. There was another girl in his apartment. She was turned away. She came back, a fight ensued, and she stabbed him in the neck," said Suffolk County Police Department Homicide Detective Lieutenant Kevin Bayer. Quarrie is also a native of Jamaica. She has family and prior addresses in St. Albans, Hollis, and Jamaica, Queens, Bayer said. Like Quarrie, Gowan was working as a home health care aide, so she was also in that same line of work. His sister and aunt say that he dreamed of becoming a nurse. Always working, and his dream was to come to America to fulfill American dream to become a registered nurse to send for his mom, said his sister Michelle Edwards. Quarrie also has prior arrests for grand larceny and drug sales. Gowan's family has a strong message for his alleged killer. "Turn yourself in so we can all have a peace of mind. We have sleepless nights," his sister said. Aside from his sister, aunt, and mother, Gowan leaves behind his 10-year-old daughter. Something else that was just missing from all that early coverage. And I know that some people might be looking at the situation and thinking, "Oh, he was cheating on her." Sure. I don't believe that infidelity is a reason for murder in any situation. The other thing I always try to keep in mind is really, who is justice for? Yes, it's in the name of the victim, but the only people that are going to get any sense of relief or be able to sleep a little bit easier, it's going to be his family members, the people that are still here mourning that loss. So that's where it's important that we treat all these cases with that same level of respect and try to help in each instance. Though Quarrie is a native of Jamaica, Suffolk police believe she did not flee the country. Instead, they believe she's working cash jobs off the grid throughout Queens, and she has family in the borough. So that's pretty interesting. Knowing that she had previously had charges for drug sales and larceny, I would imagine that she would probably be doing more of that kind of work, stuff that was underground rather than still trying to do her home health aid type work. I mean, it just doesn't seem feasible. How would she advertise herself? She'd be leaving a trail behind. She would have a regular schedule, I would assume, for going to see some of those people. So my gut would be telling me she would probably be leaning into, more of the work she could do, where you're not going to have a lot of traceability, accountability. Other considerations about that here: she's believed to be living off the grid, using cash for rent, and not carrying a phone, making her difficult to track. I'd be very surprised if she had no phone at all. What I would think is she would probably just pick up a burner phone, but detectives believe that she may have ties to an entertainment company called Pure Connections. And I'm wondering if that might be part of, maybe those events would be the type of place where she would go to do her work, maybe to sell drugs if that's what she's back to doing. I tried to look into Pure Connections a bit, and unfortunately, there's several posts that look like there's these parties that they put on, and these posts all pull back to this same page at TikTok. We can see it's /discover/ Pure Connection Party, Queens, New York City, or NYC. But all of them come back to this page not available. So I don't know if that page has been taken down recently. I did find a couple of traces of it that still exist. From 10 weeks ago, we can see that Jamaican John here put a post up for a a white party, basically, that they were having where everyone comes dressed in white. And I did find a YouTube video as well, and it seems like Jamaican themed parties. So it's interesting to me that they're calling out she might have some connections to this. I don't know if that would be a legit connection, like she's actually tied in with the organizers of these events, or if she was just following these events because, it was a place she could work. But please take a good look at these photos. And if you have friends in the New York area, please share this video with them. Law enforcement is being very vocal that they are asking for help at this point. Sure, you could ask the question of, why did it take this long, especially if there is something as solid as a witness who saw this. We know that there was likely another woman that was in the home at this time. Could she potentially be the witness? Could it be the relative of the elderly person that was quoted in the earlier article? I don't know, but it seems pretty solid when you have law enforcement come out on a Facebook post and say, yeah, she stabbed this guy in the neck. And that's what we have here. Why there was a year and a half between that information seemingly being collected and the call for help from the public, I'm not exactly sure. But I'm doing my best, just trying to take all these little independent sources to make kind of the most concise version of this story that has as much detail as possible. I wish there was more detail about Conrad that we can share here, but I think we got the important stuff. He's got a family waiting for justice. He has a daughter that no longer has her father, and police are telling us it's because of the woman on this screen right now. I went through all the sources available for that case. I can find nothing to suggest that she's some kind of master of disguise. But it did send me kind of down that rabbit hole. And I think, one of the most famous occurrences that might kind of line up with that for me, especially for someone that got away and we still don't know who they are or where they are, would be DB Cooper. Obviously, we've talked about that on the channel a few times in the past, so I don't want to go into that case again. But even in that instance, I don't know that it was a disguise necessarily. I mean, sure, the dark glasses, but I think it was just the fact that he was so nondescript and so kind of bold that he captured the public's imagination and almost has a bit of a cult following at this point. But he's not the only one. There's someone else. And the disguise is so convincing that it seems like for a while, law enforcement isn't sure if it's legit or not. And who I'm talking about is someone that they would refer to as the Geezer Bandit. And here are some photos of the Geezer Bandit. And when I originally started looking into this isn't a case that I was super familiar with. But the first inclination I had when I saw this is, I think it's a mask and I want to see his hands. And there's a few photos where you can see his hands. And honestly, the detail that's happening on his hands looks like he might be wearing some kind of glove, possibly another latex. If the mask is latex, maybe he's wearing some type of latex hand as well. There's only a few photos of him available that I've seen where his hands are visible. But that's, if I'm correct about this, being a costume of some kind. Let's go ahead and dig into the details and rewind the clock a little bit for this case, the case of the Geezer Bandit. And basically, he had a run of bank robberies that started in 2009 and continued to about 2011. This article at 7 San Diego NBC is from 2012, and it says it's been 3 years since one of San Diego's most notorious bank robbers began his crime spree. The so-called Geezer Bandit, responsible for 15 bank robberies throughout California, hasn't been caught. I mean, that would show that whatever he's doing is effective. For him to pull this off 15 times, especially in the 2010s, we had the internet. We all have cell phones. We all have social media. Most of our phones have some form of camera on them at that point. How is this guy getting away with it 15 times? Special Agent James Stinnett with the FBI in San Diego has been investigating the Geezer's crime spree. The Geezer Bandit carries a day planner to hide his gun and brings a plastic bag to carry the money. He also usually demands that there's no dye packs in there, and he works pretty forcefully. In one particular instance, a teller described that he said to them, if you guys try to pull anything, I will murder everyone in this building. So he definitely uses fear to try to control the situation, and he's armed on top of that. But yeah, so he brings his gun in a day planner. He's the luckiest person I know, said the FBI agent. The fact that he's only received the one security device out of 16 robberies is phenomenal. And what he's talking about there is in the last robbery, there was a die pack and it actually went off. That occurred last December in San Luis Obispo. The die pack exploded, stunning the elusive bank robbery suspect for a moment before he somehow got away. It was the Geezer Bandits' last known robbery. But a few other things happened that day. He dropped his day planner at the scene of the robbery. The FBI says that that piece of evidence is still being forensically analyzed for fingerprints or DNA. Stinnett said it's possible the Geezer Bandit may have just quit robbing banks, but in most cases, bank robbers continue until they're caught. And it is an interesting thought to think of someone that would pull this off successfully 15 times and then just stop. Like, why would you stop? I mean, it kind of does lean back into the possibility that, well, if he actually is that old, maybe he got sick, maybe he passed away, maybe that's why his spree stopped. But what didn't stop was the popularity of the Geezer Bandit. You can buy this shirt for your baby if you want. Geezer Bandit for president. And there's tons of merch around this guy. Move over DB Cooper for Geezer Bandit. It's been several years now, and nary a trace of the Geezer Bandit, whom some thought may have been a younger man with an elaborate disguise, although the FBI has said he indeed was an older geezer in his 70s. Now, most of the coverage that I looked through back at the time seems to be that they're leaning towards it being a disguise. Honestly, I haven't run into any statements by the FBI that's saying that he actually was older. But the Geezer Bandit has achieved a following of sorts. He has a Facebook page with over 3,000 followers. There's a slew of merchandise, including coffee mugs, caps, ties, and a Geezer Bandit tote bag. Is the Geezer Bandit alive or dead? Was he an old guy or a younger person in deep disguise? I think we can answer that pretty conclusively. So this is footage from the attempt he made where they actually loaded the die packet into the bag. And the die packet goes off and it does stun him. He seems to stay in place for some period of time as this packet is just pluming with smoke. But after a few moments, just watch this area on the top left of the playback window. Do you see that character that is shooting out of there and is pretty much off screen within only 5 frames? That's him. So thinking that someone in their 70s could take off and run at that speed after having an explosive die pack go off in the bag that you're carrying, certainly leads me to believe that we're talking about a younger man. And they did look in that direction, as we can see from this article over at LA Taco. The Geezer Bandit, reported to be an elderly bank robber who is surprisingly light on his feet, may actually be a younger man in a mask. Take a look at the latest security footage of the geezer above. Here we go. And a mask called the Elder by SPFX Masks below. See a resemblance? The feds do. They're looking into a costume shop in the San Luis Obispo area that sells the mask. So here is the footage from one of the robberies. Here is the mask that they're talking about. I've seen another picture of the mask, and I do believe that the mouth is articulated in it. You can actually move your jaw and the mouth will open, because I know in some of these photos it's very clear that the mouth is open. It's hard to do like a one-to-one comparison, especially with these angles being quite a bit different, but it looks like a good match to me. Very possible that that could be their mask. But there's something else really curious about that this mask sold by a company in the San Luis Obispo area. And most of the robberies that happened originally were happening in the San Diego area. San Luis Obispo is, gosh, I would imagine that's maybe 7, maybe even an 8-hour drive away from that area. And a few of his later robberies happen in that area. As a matter of fact, in 2020, finally some information would be released where one of the tellers spoke to the press, and she would say, I know he was wearing a mask. When he first came in, the color of his face seemed very off. It seemed almost like waxy. I noticed that there was a circular hole right in the center of the ear, and I realized it was a mask. And that is one of the tellers who was robbed by him. That teller worked at Heritage Oaks Bank in Morro Bay, and Morro Bay is literally, I think it's like a 15-minute drive from San Luis Obispo. Detectives later served a search warrant on that Hollywood mask company, seeking the names of all customers who had purchased the old man mask. But apparently investigators never found their man. I don't know how that didn't work unless he came in and bought the mask using cash only. Maybe they didn't track customers in that way in terms of receipts. And if he didn't use a credit card, they'd have no way to kind of back trace it to him. But here's the craziest consideration for this whole story now. Even if the geezer bandit was identified these days, he could no longer be charged with a crime. The federal statute of limitations for bank robbery is 5 years. The California state statute of limitations for robbery is 6 years. So literally at this point, he could come clean. He could come public and say, oh yeah, guys, it was me. And no charges could be filed. I don't think it would be very smart to do so. And I imagine most people would feel the same. And of course, there's the other possibility that he's still committing these crimes, but he's just changed his MO in some way. He's not using a mask. He's gone to some other part of the country to do this, something along those lines. The FBI told News 8 the Geezer Bandit case is officially closed because the robber can no longer be prosecuted, which is curious. And I was thinking about this statute of limitations for bank robbery like that. Shouldn't there be different amounts set? Like if, he totaled, in most of these robberies, he was probably getting away with only a few $1,000s. I looked into this a little bit, and basically the rough estimate is, for robberies of that nature, you're probably going to come away with somewhere between like $4,000 to $6,000 for each occurrence. So, he does this 15 times. That's not quite to $100,000. And I don't know if there's a different law that might kick in at that level that maybe would extend the statute of limitations. But maybe there should be, or maybe there should be a certain amount that it hits where things change and it's like, okay, the statute of limitations on this one, can hold at this point. It just kind of blows my mind that someone can do something like this, hide out or skip the country, disappear for 5 years and come back, and that's it. Just no muss, no fuss, get away with it. Interestingly, the FBI still has the page about him up. It does have a note at the top just saying that it's outdated information. But it still states that there's a $20,000 reward. I think they're just leaving this up for historical sake. They've got every instance of the robberies that happened, numerous photos of him. Again, I was looking here. Here's another one of his hand, and it doesn't necessarily look like that is an older person's hand. So I don't know if he was wearing some kind of, it looks like almost like it could be a clear latex glove of some kind that he's got covering his hands. This one also strikes me as possibly being a latex. This one especially looks like a latex glove, especially with the way that it's kind of creasing on the top of his hand. But, based on what the teller is saying and based on how the investigation went in terms of finding that mask called the Elder, I think it's pretty solid that he was using a costume, and basically because of that, he got away with it. Is he still in operation? I don't know. Can you guys think of any other cases of that nature? Like, I really had to search in all kinds of different ways trying to find something that really fit that criteria. It's just not something that a lot of people think of in terms of kind of in this area of bank robberies. It's much more common trying to evade detection or capture for a violent crime. I couldn't find anything that really lined up with that. I was hoping to find even a solved case that we could potentially look at that might help us understand what's going on with Majorie Quarrie's case here. But I couldn't find the right conditions for that. But I didn't want to leave you guys hanging in terms of a crime that was actually involving someone that I would consider a master of disguise. That guy pulled off 15 of those robberies successfully. He obviously knew what he was doing there, and in an era where, by all accounts, he should have been caught. He should have been tracked down. Like, we've got DNA in the 2010s. We've got electronics, cell phone. We've got good surveillance. We've got good cameras. How did he get away with it is kind of mind blowing. It does interest me that for his later crimes, assuming he bought the mask close to home, it seems like the later crimes he was doing were close to his home again. I think that's interesting, seeing how his MO changed all around that. But I also find it hard to think that he just stopped. What I also find hard to think is that this family is dealing with not having this woman in custody. So again, please take a moment. If you have any friends in New York, please share this video with them. Majorie Quarrie, also known as Majorie Quarrie or Nicola Watson, there is up to a $5,000 reward available via Crime Stoppers of Suffolk County. And if you have information on her whereabouts, contact Crime Stoppers of Suffolk County at 1-800-220-TIPS. That's 1-800-220-8477. They're also noting here that she should be considered very dangerous. Please consider sharing this so that Conrad's family can get justice and answers in their loved one's case. The fact that Conrad was dating other women is not an excuse for Majorie to allegedly murder him. Very well said by our friends at Solve the Case, and I can't agree with them more. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. A big thank you to our supporters at PayPal, Patreon, people that buy merchandise. You guys make it so that we can run these presentations with limited commercials. There's only one at the beginning and one at the end. We want to do that so you can stay focused here on the case, and we can try to be as helpful as possible with these presentations. If you'd like to become one of those supporters, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or buy merchandise. You can also just buy us a coffee like B. Jones does regularly. We really appreciate the support as we look to help so many people in these tough situations, and sometimes go down rabbit holes like we did today of other crimes. I still can't believe that one isn't solved. Tell me what you guys think about it in the comments down below, and have a great weekend. Please join us again next Friday for a brand new episode of Searchlight right here on the Lord and Arts channel.